Hi guys, welcome to Wiki Tutor. In this video I am going to talk about the worst seafood to eat. Fish can be one of the healthiest foods there is. It's low in harmful fats. Fatty fish are considered a lean source of protein and often high in nutrients, including beneficial omega-3 fatty acids, which contribute to brain and heart health. Not all fish is good for you. However, many varieties, especially the larger ones with longer lifespans, contain various contaminations, most often significant amounts of mercury. This highly toxic metal can have a serious neurological impact, particularly in children and on fetuses, and increases the risk of high blood pressure and heart attack. While species with particularly high mercury levels are best to avoid entirely, others are fine to eat occasionally, typically no more than once a week. Health issues aside, there are also environmental and ethical reasons to avoid eating some fish. Many species are overfished, sometimes illegally, some to the point where they are threatened with extinction. Bycatch is another issue. The term refers to species of fish or shellfish or other marine creatures like sea turtle and seabirds, inadvertently taken along with the target species. Desirable bycatch is often retained and sold, but many species and non-edible bycatch are simply discarded, meaning returned to the sea where they likely die. Farmed fish can cause environmental problems too, as they can escape into the surrounding environment where they interbreed with or compete for food with wild species. The antibiotics and other chemicals often used to raise them can leak into surrounding seas. To determine which varieties of fish and shellfish are best to avoid for reasons of health or environmental impact, or both, 24/7 tempo-reviewed recommendations and warnings from numerous environmental and medical websites. Please subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon to receive every upload. Number 1. Swordfish. Reason to avoid is high in mercury and parasites. While only imported longline swordfish is considered unsustainable, in general the fish should be avoided because of its potentially high mercury levels and the possible presence of nematodes or other parasites, though its high level of nutrients are thought to justify an occasional meal. Number 2. Marlin. Reason to avoid is high in mercury, depleted population, risks to other species. Marlin can have higher level of mercury than swordfish. In addition, the fisheries for many types of the fish are considered poorly managed, and sea turtle, sharks and seabirds may be taken as bycatch. Shark. Reason to avoid high in mercury, depleted populations, risk to other species. Many species of shark have sky-high mercury levels, and shark meat has meager nutritional value, so there's little reason to eat it. Declining populations are also a problem because of the shark's essential role in the food chain. Seafood Watch makes an exception for the shark. also called spiny dogfish when it's fished in the United States. Tilefish. Reason to avoid: high in mercury. Tilefish could be unhealthiest fish of all, with extremely high levels of mercury wherever it's harvested around the world. Those levels are double in tilefish from the Gulf of Mexico. Tilefish is also taken by unsustainable fishing methods. King mackerel. Reason to avoid: high in mercury. Unlike its smaller, healthier cousins in the mackerel family, the king mackerel, also known as Spanish mackerel, is large enough to guarantee that it will contain a higher level of mercury. Orange rofi. Reason to avoid: high in mercury, depleted populations. The first thing you should know about this fish is that an alternative name for it is slimehead. According to Greenpeace, many orange rofi stocks have already crashed, and recently discovered stocks are decreasing rapidly. In addition, it is slow growing. It can live to be 100 years old, so it has a lot of time for bioaccumulation of mercury. Bluefin tuna. Reason to avoid: high in mercury and PCBs. Severely depleted populations, risk to other species, illegal fishing. Highly valued as a delicacy, the owner of a Japanese sushi chain paid $3.1 million for a 613 pounds specimen earlier this year. Bluefin tuna is one of the most endangered major marine species. Populations of all three varieties, Atlantic, Pacific, and Southern, have declined precipitously in the past few decades. As a food item, they are to be avoided for their high levels of toxins. Big eye tuna. Reason to avoid: high in mercury, destructive fishing methods, illegal fishing. Big eye is one of two species of tuna called eye, and like other tuna is high in mercury. Conservationists urge that consumers choose tuna other than big eye because of its diminishing numbers due to unsustainable fishing practices, including so-called IUU, illegal, unregulated and unreported harvesting by pirate longliners. Yellowfin tuna. Reason to avoid is high in mercury, destructive fishing methods, illegal fishing. Like all tuna, yellowfin, the other species marketed as ahi, is extremely nutritious, but like other large fish, it is contaminated by mercury. Compared with other tuna species, it has about the same amount of mercury as albacore, twice the amount of skipjack, and half as much as big eye. Yellowfin is overfished, and sea turtle, sharks, and seabirds are often taken as bycatch. Tilapia from China. Reason to avoid: dosed with antibiotics, negative habitat impact. Tilapia is generally a safe and a healthy, inexpensive choice, but origin is important. Avoid tilapia from China, where concerns include illegal use of antibiotics by farmers and widespread escape of the fish from flooded farming regions and subsequent impact on local wild species. Some health authorities warn against tilapia because of its high omega-6 content, But the American Heart Association says that omega-6 fats are not only safe, but they are also beneficial for the heart and circulation. Atlantic cod. Reason to avoid: vulnerable to extinction. Atlantic cod fisheries collapsed in the 1990s, and 2016 saw their lowest number in recent years. Two rebuilding programs for major fisheries are now in progress with a goal of stabilizing populations in this decade. But for now, Atlantic cod, also known as cod, should be off the table. Atlantic flatfish. Reason to avoid: potentially high in mercury, PCBs and other contaminations, declining populations. While specific population of flatfish such as flounder, sole and halibut are generally stable and healthy, their Atlantic cousins suffer from overfishing, though there are current initiatives to rebuild the stocks. The International Union of Conservation of Nature lists Atlantic halibut as endangered. Depending on where they are fished, these species may contain substantial quantities of mercury and or PCBs. Chilean sea bass. Reason to avoid: high in mercury, declining populations, illegal fishing, negative habitat impact. It is not a true bass. It doesn't always come from Chile, and its original name was Patagonian toothfish. But Chilean sea bass is one of the most popular of food fishes. Prized for its delicious meat, unfortunately it's high in mercury and vastly overfished, and its declining number of potentially affect its marine environmental negatively. Eel. Reason to avoid: contaminants, negative habitat impact, declining populations. With some exceptions, most eel, American, European or Japanese, is raised under conditions that encourage the use of potentially harmful chemicals, and disease is common. In addition, effluents discharged from eel farms may harm native populations, and overfishing threatens wild eels. Farmed salmon. The reason to avoid: high in PCBs and other contaminants, negative habitat impact. Often raised in crowded pens, these fish may be fed antibiotics to fend off disease and parasites. They also accumulate PCBs. Parasites and diseases from salmon pens can spread to nearly wild stock. In addition, farmed salmon is typically fed on other fish, and it takes about 3 pounds of wild fish to produce 1 pound of farmed salmon. Imported basa, swai, trawl, stripped catfish. Reason to avoid: high in Vibrio bacteria and other pollutants. A type of Vietnamese catfish, swai is often pond raised with hyper-intensive production method that generate toxic substances. The next is imported farmed shrimp. Reason to avoid: high in contaminants, negative habitat impact. About 90% of the shrimp Americans eat is imported, and most imported shrimp comes from farms in Southern Asia and Central America. Asian shrimp farms have in many cases replaced environmentally important Mangroves. From a health perspective, much imported shrimp contain antibiotics that are not approved in US. Imported king crab. Reason to avoid overfishing, negative habitat impact. About half the king crab consumed in the US is from Russia's Barents Sea. Russian fisheries are thought to be poorly managed from an environmental point of view, and because the king crab is an invasive species in Russian waters, it is having a negative impact on ecology. Grouper. Reason to avoid high in mercury, declining population. There are more than 85 grouper species worldwide, slow to reproduce, most are threatened by overfishing. US grouper fisheries typically set catch limits that are higher than those recommended. They have also been subject to consumption warnings because of their mercury level. Monkfish. Reason to avoid negative habitat impact. Light in color and sometimes said to resemble lobster in flavor and texture. This popular fish is recovering from depletion, but the trawling and dredging methods used for the catch is destructive to marine habitat. Red snapper. Reason to avoid declining populations, negative habitat impact. Perhaps the Gulf of Mexico's most famous fish, red snapper, has been seriously overfished, and fishery managers allow a catch that's 50% higher than recommended. In addition, bycatch of sharks, groupers, porgies, and other species account for a staggering 44% of the total taken. So friends, I am sure you liked the video. Stay tuned for more amazing content. See you guys in another exciting video. Thank you so much.